welcome to the Fantasy Rewind podcast. I'm your co-host, Dylan Stoll, and as always, I'm joined by my friend Mike.
Hey!
So today, we are going to be doing some parting shots at Wheel of Time here, doing something that's a little bit of fun, talking about the Forsaken and their ranks as far as like where I think they are from weakest to strongest, and comparing that to where Mike found...
Yes, the Screen Rant article on the Forsaken ranked weakest to strongest. So we're going to see how Dylan differs. I did not make my own list, but I will give my opinions because I felt like this sort of swayed my perspective a little bit on some of the Forsaken.
But so we're going to get into all of that stuff, but before we do, we're going to talk about our typical reminders here. If you want to get in contact with the show, you can send us an email, which is fantasyrewindpod@gmail.com. We're also on X and Instagram, which is @FantasyRewindPod, or just Fantasy Rewind on X. All right, without farther delay, let's dive into this Rewind ranking episode.
Fantasy Rewind. All right, Dylan. So before we get into the ranking, just a real quick touchback to, well, one, congratulate, you had some news.
Yeah. So the reason I was not on the last episode is because I was attending the birth of my first son. So we got some awesome news there. Mom and baby are all healthy and everyone's doing well. So that's going good. Of course, I got to throw a little bit of fantasy in there, sprinkling in some magic to the naming element there. Didn't get the first name, but I got to choose the middle name. And so that was fun. But I was excited to check it out because since I was bored and in a hospital, I listened to the episode, of course. And so I got to hear you talk about Percy Jackson, got to hear you talk about Avatar: The Last Airbender, all that good stuff there. So just talking about like my 2 cents with those things really fast. Percy Jackson, it looks very interesting, very different, like feel-wise for me, from the movies that came out, which is my only exposure to Percy Jackson. And for that, Mike just makes a quick cross and throws up in his mouth a little bit.
Garbage.
But yeah, so I think it looks very interesting. It does look a lot more like kid-centered. However, there's nothing wrong with that because that's kind of what the source material is from my understanding as well. And so I'm excited to like check that out, see how that goes. The special effects and everything like that look great. Disney Plus, has done a fantastic job, in my opinion, with a lot of the Marvel stuff. So I'm excited to see how this works out.
Fingers crossed here.
Now, the surprise for me is how much I'm excited about Avatar: The Last Airbender. Because
now,
never.
Dylan, have you ever
so that's what I was
going to
say.
Okay, so I highly recommend you watch it. One, it is fantastic.
Netflix is out here,
but
coming in strong with the live-action anime adaptations with One Piece, which we're going to talk about still at some point here, probably next. But spoiler, I love it. Talking about how that inspired me to go back and watch the anime because I'd never done that before either. I'm getting so pumped about watching these new trailers for Avatar: Last Airbender. It just has me so excited for the show. It looks fantastic, and it really makes me wish that Wheel of Time was being done on Netflix. But with all that being said, I'm so pumped to talk about it. Gonna definitely watch that when it comes out in February. Very excited for it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I couldn't agree more. That is one show we will definitely cover here. I mean, I know it's anime, but fantasy, it is totally fantasy.
Just with an anime covering with it.
So great. Exactly. So now, let's get into Wheel of Time, the Forsaken rankings. Why don't you do your ranking, and then I'll tell you what the corresponding one is from Screen Rant, starting at spot number 13. And just tell us really quickly your thought process with this person.
I'm coming right out the gate with Balthamel, because for me, this dude shows up book 1 as a bag of bones, gets killed by an inexperienced Rand with no problem at all, comes back as Arengar, and I mean, shows a little bit more finesse and has a little bit more like time in the sun as Arengar. However, I just feel like Balthamel was never anything really important. He was just kind of like a flash in the pan Forsaken that was being able to be overcome by a very inexperienced Randall Thor. And so for me, that's why I ranked him at the bottom.
That I agree with you there. Screen Rant at number 13 has Mogadine, as she is one of the weakest in the power. But she makes up for her weakness in the power with her abilities and
I will.
So that was kind of where they
put
when
I get to
her.
Mogadine, and she's not in the very bottom. She's close though.
Okay, well then,
number
let's
12
hop to number
for
12
me
then.
is Masana, and why I'm saying Masana here is because I feel like, again, she was this very like niche flash in the pan Forsaken that was a little bit more powerful and everything. However, I'm putting her in the bottom because of her aversion to action. She was so kind of like in the shadows, hiding and biding her time in the White Tower, not really doing much as far as like fighting goes. And correct me if I'm wrong, Mike, but isn't she the one that Perrin catches the balefire from? Yeah.
Messina?
And where he's like, it's just a weave. Egwene.
I don't quite remember.
I can't remember if that's her or not. But
oh yeah.
Either way, like
Egwene
Egwene was able to make quick work of Masana, and so I don't really view her as much of a threat, and so that's why again I have her at number 12.
Interesting. So I'm going to tell you right off the bat here, pretty much Screen Rant put almost all the female Forsaken right at the end, because in terms of the power, which is how I think they really went with their rankings, they're all weaker than the men. But number 12, they have Grendel. And their thing is just that, again, she lacks raw channeling ability. She's far from the most powerful, but she is pretty good with combative weaves. Yeah, and she has an Angreal that helps her.
All right. So up to number 11, right? This is where I have Mogadine. So I have Mogadine down here because she's not at the very bottom, in my opinion, since she has the mastery of Tel'aran'rhiod and everything, like we talked about. And I actually value that because when you talk about, characters like Perrin that are able to do silly things to other people just based on their strength in the dream world. And so Mogadine has that going for her. Why I put her at the bottom is because she was able to be beaten one-on-one by Nynaeve. And so Nynaeve kicking her butt, making her her pet, that's why I put Mogadine down low.
Now, it did pretty much take almost everything from Nynaeve to beat her and all of that, but I agree. And I would also put an underrated thing for Grendel is
Mogadine?
her manipulation, like her plans on plans. Mogadine, sorry, yes.
Right.
Is her plans on plans, right? And I think that's a really big strength for her. She did let others kind of go to the forefront, and while that might not be seen as strong strength, like up in the front paladin, like she's manipulative and
so the way that I'm looking at this list here that I have is I'm valuing strength as not just pure brawn, but also like the ability to manipulate others, the ability to use the dream world, the ability to kind of like just influence the world around you. But that's where...
Oh, yeah. And I think that's the way to interpret strength, and especially in the
That's where I have Mogadine not at the bottom, but like
case.
Again, close to it, but a little low.
Now, I agree with you in your placement of her, because I would, even in this list here, you know, they talked about how she was the weakest in the power, but like all her other things that she was good at. And then at number 11, they have Messina. So, you know, and they don't really have that many nice things to say about her. She has a little bit more luck with the power, or a little bit more power, if you will, than the other two. But at the same time, she doesn't really make up for it in any
The other thing I'm keeping in mind, too, is that you have these characters that they're evil, right? They're joining the Dark for one reason or another. But one of the things they have going for them is that the Dark One can give them more power. So even though Mogadine might not be the most powerful and raw channeling ability, the Dark One could give her true power access if he wanted to. And so, like, I'm not viewing that as necessarily like the end all be all for raw channeling ability. Like I said, it's more to it in my mind than just the brawn.
That's a good idea.
Number 10 for me is
All right,
Asmodean.
Number 10, Dylan.
And so I put Asmodean here because he is the other bard that we were introduced to really in this this adventure here. He is still like demonstrated to be like a little powerful, and Rand does have some help with Lanfear, or help from Lanfear in taking Asmodean out. But he is made into like Rand's teacher, into like a little pet for the Dragon Reborn, as opposed to being like this actual threat that he has to dispose of and get rid of. So I think Asmodean, you know, he wasn't really super like aggressive except for that one instance, and then he was kind of like, yeah, when he was getting greedy.
Yeah, when he was greedy.
And so I kind of see him as being a weaker member of the Forsaken.
Yeah. So at number 10 for their list, they have Semirhage, and they said that, you know, she is probably one of, if not more powerful than Lanfear, at least behind her in the power. And she also comes with a complete knowledge of the human body and torture techniques.
Yeah.
Because of her past as a healer. And I think those are some really good things, yeah. But I would put her ahead of Asmodean, too. So I agree with you there. All
Number
right,
nine for me, I have Bilal. And so for me, I put Bilal this low strictly because, again, he's kind of like a one-off villain and not really seen throughout the rest of the series. I mean, he comes in the Dragon Reborn, if I'm not mistaken, book 3, where like after Rand fights and beats Shamael in the sky, he's the one that's like hanging out around Kalimdor and stuff like that. But yeah, he takes care of him pretty quickly. So like I was like, okay, I get that you are a little bit more powerful in my eyes than Asmodean, but you're still pretty low. And I'm putting some respect on Grendel and Semirhage here, I guess, with my rankings of them, which we'll get to eventually, but I put Bilal next.
Yeah, and I wouldn't disagree with that. So you're thinking of the whole story as well, not just their strength. And again, you had mentioned that. So for their number 9, they put Lanfear. Again, because female channelers weaker than the male channelers, which we really haven't necessarily seen so much in
Not yet, but I will say
yet,
in the show, we're talking about Lanfear quaking in her boots with Mogadine. So we'll see how strong she actually is in the books. Or sorry, in the show.
Now, I will say that at number 8, they have Bilal. And they say he's the weakest male Forsaken in terms of the one power. And his access to the one power is the lowest in comparison to the other male Forsaken. Plus, compared to the female Forsaken, he's lacking in special abilities or skills. And also his jealousy. He's super jealous. So, like, they're just basically giving all the negatives. But again, I would almost say, like, he should be behind Lanfear and Semirhage.
Like, to me, having those special abilities is what makes you more powerful. Not just, again, the brawn that we've talked about here.
Correct. Yeah. So your guys' lists are similar in sort of, like, placement of, like, the female and male characters so far as I'm looking at this list a little bit. But just where you have them in the overall.
Well, we'll see. It's going to get a little different here, I have a feeling, coming up. Number 8, Grendel. Okay. Well, and so for me, this comes down to just how proficient Grendel made herself in her, like, glamoring ensnarement spells that she did with folks, where she could, like, melt an opponent's mind and make them her servants, and how she did that very efficiently to many characters throughout the series. She was never somebody that was, like, super, like, confrontational, like, direct confrontational bit there. Always kind of hiding, and she lasted longer in the series than I thought she would. But just how skilled she was with, like, that, basically Cruciatus Curse Harry Potter spell that she did with these people is why I put her where I did.
Compulsion and all that, yeah. I don't disagree at all with that. All right, number 7. You want to go again, and then I'll get back to because their number 8 was Bilal.
Yeah. So next up for me, I have Agnor, and I put Agnor here because, like Bathamo, he doesn't really do much in the series. However, I added a little bit more respect to Agonor's name because he's the one that created the Trollocs. He's the one that created the Myrddraal. He has such like a big presence that's felt throughout the entire series, even if he himself is not having like the direct impact. His work is so important throughout the series based on just those two discoveries or creations alone. So that's where I put Agonor up there, with his mind making him a dangerous person to fight against.
I agree. For number 7, they have Asmodean, and for many of the same reasons you mentioned. He the only thing they added on there is that his attitude, right? He had no interest really in power. He just focused more on the arts, and yeah, that sort of did keep him from being more powerful. But I thought that was interesting that they put him above when he is pretty much altogether considered the weakest.
Right. I mean,
Forsaken.
I think Lanfear could have taken him easily on by herself, and so.
Oh yeah.
Next up for me, I have Semirhage. And so we talked about Semirhage already a little bit based on the list that you have there, Mike. But for me, I have her where I do because she is the torturer. She is the name that's feared throughout like all the land. Like if you get captured by any of the Forsaken, it's never good. But if you get captured by Semirhage, it's extra not good. You're in for some pain when you are captured by Semirhage. And she's also the person who was able to weasel her way in and take out Rand's hand and basically string him up and capture him, if I'm not mistaken there. And then Aviendha had to come in and save her a little bit, and then, cause yeah, she was the one that was impersonating Tuon as well. So yeah. So just through raw deception, through torturers' skill and reputation, that's where I have Semirhage ranked a little higher.
Yeah, that's fair. So at number 6, they have Balthamo. And like you had said, you'd brought up some really great points, but the biggest thing they said about him, his biggest strength, is his dark mind and how he committed many atrocities before the collapse as a member of the Chosen.
All right.
As I said, you guys' ranking of a lot of these were in some areas close, but those having all the women
definitely did not make sense to me.
And I think that's the biggest thing with these two lists, that your list versus theirs, and why I agree with yours more, is that put some respect on their name, right? I mean, it's not just about the one power channeling ability. If you get messed up in your dreams, or if you have someone take you out from behind, it doesn't matter how much raw strength you have.
Number 5 for me, I have Rahvin. And so I have Rahvin here because of what he was able to accomplish in Andor. And that was pretty much almost take over the country from within, being able to get in and manipulate Morgheze and gain control of Andor. That was pretty impressive. Even though he did it through more deceptive means, that still takes some strength. He was also the person that was able to unleash Balefire and kill a lot of folks before Rand killed him with his own Balefire, which undid the killing. A little time loop there. But I don't know. Yes, but so that's why I have Rahvin that high. I thought just the act of actually successfully taking over a country put him up high.
Nice. Yeah, I think that's a great one to put there. At the number 5 spot, they put Agonor. Said he's very powerful, but he's very subservient as well, often saying he was afraid of Shamiel and following Shamiel's orders to the letter. So that was number 5 for them, Agonor.
Number
4, Dylan. Now I think this is going to be interesting because I'm excited to see where you placed these
number
final
4
really.
Is Samael. And so I put Samael down here at 4 because he was somebody that was always behind Lews Therin, always behind Demandred, and he was somebody who I thought was still very powerful and very tactical in his own military might, but just not quite as good as those two. And so that's why I have Samael at 4. he also did successfully take over a country of Ilion. And so that was another like point in his favor. And I just feel like he kind of got messed up by Mashadar when he was fighting Rand. And if it wasn't for Mashadar, who knows how that fight would have turned out.
Yeah, that's a good point. Well, we have our first similar ranking here. At number 4, they also put Samael. So their thought process is pretty much the same as you. Very powerful. A lot of times he's known for like tactics and stuff, but a lot of what they said is that his tactics were obvious and that he often went on the defensive, and the other Forsaken didn't always agree with his schemes. So, well, yeah, that's fair. All right, Dylan, number 3.
And I think this is kind of the lowest I could go with Lanfear. And I just don't see how I could put her any lower. It's just, she is so skilled at the manipulation, at telling Renriad, at doing her own thing, and not necessarily taking the path of least resistance. She kind of goes and does what's right for her, and that sometimes means clashing with her quote-unquote allies or dark friends and other Forsaken. And I think that she is very powerful for obvious reasons. The one thing I thought about with her and what made this a little bit harder than I thought was thinking about how she also gets her like channeling ability siphoned off when she goes to the world of the Elfin and the Ilfin. And I wasn't quite sure like if I should rank her as high because of like her previous channeling ability, which is what I ended up going with. Because after she was brought back from that, after she was brought back from that, she obviously was weaker. But yeah, Lanfear, I feel like just how important she is and how skilled she is. Maybe not like the most beat you over the head with her power, but she's definitely got talent in a lot of areas, and that's why I ranked her as high as I did.
She's honestly probably one of the most well-rounded outside of Ishamael. All right, well, their number 3 is Demandred. And they said that he obviously is one of the most powerful. He had a raw talent with the one power and a mind for combat. And it was stated that if not for Lewis Theron, he would have been the greatest Aes Sedai of the Age of Legends. So they have him at number 3. I do agree, though, that Lanfear should have been up here in the
for sure.
top 3.
Well, I have Demandred at number 2. So...
And I think just to kind of go off of their number 2 is Ravine.
Oh, yeah.
I would also flip
easily. To me, that's not even a debate. Like,
I know. I thought this was very fun. They said that the reason they have Ravine here is that he has almost the same level of power as Rand or Ishamael, but he never proves himself to be especially important among the Forsaken. And not so much basically saying he has the raw power, he just doesn't use it. No, so to me, Demandred, why I have him at number 2, is he was able to, first of all, go into Shara, take over the entire nation, have them worship him like a god, and then lead them out of their land to go and fight some people they've never even met before. And, like, on top of that, takes out Logain, takes out, oh my gosh, what is Elaine's brother there? He cuts off his arm. Oh, yeah.
He kills Galad.
Not
Galad. Gawain.
Yeah, kills Galad.
Cuts off Gawain's arm, and then goes toe-to-toe with Lan Mandragoran in a sword fight. And to me, like, holy cow, like, this dude is a badass. And he is not to be trifled with.
Yeah.
Demandred for number 2. Let's go.
I can't argue with that at all. I thought he should have been number 2, and I would agree too. He beats out Lanfear because he's not torn like Lanfear is torn, right? So she does have to kind of get knocked down just a little bit because she does help out Rand and everyone. Like, she's doing so much, and she is, like I said, probably the most well-rounded.
See,
But
I was flip-flopping
yeah.
those two for a while, actually. It was
Demandred
Demandred and Lanfear, and I was like, I just have to put Demandred
Yeah.
higher because of his commitment to going pure evil.
So at number 1, it seems like you both have the
Ishamael.
same, which is Ishamael. Yes, their number 2, I already said it was Ravine. Okay. Yeah, number 1, Ishamael. So you guys have the same in 2 spots with Samael at number 4 and Ishamael at number 1.
So for me, I had to go Ishamael for number 1 here. And a large part of this is because of what happens once he becomes Moradin. After he dies, basically, of the first time, and is brought back. And he is brought back as a younger dude who is much more focused, much less insane, and straight up accomplishing his goals of ending the wheel. And the way that he goes about it,
oh yeah,
unparalleled in his strength. Obviously, you know, he has this huge fight with Rand at the end of the book, series, and just it's so evenly matched for this part here that it's crazy. And that if Moradin never like showed his face, it was just crazy as Ishamael from the first couple of books, I'd have this lower. But because of that clarity he gains after death, it makes him so dangerous, and he's so powerful that I couldn't even consider anyone else at number 1. It was always Ishamael.
Agreed. Now, their explanation is not nearly as good. They basically just say he's the leader of the Forsaken. He's really powerful. So your explanation, much better. I honestly cannot disagree with number 1. And if I were to go between the 2 lists, I would definitely go towards your list. I think the Screen Rant, while it ranks via the power, is probably pretty close. I'd still adjust some of theirs, even if it's just straight off the power. I think you do need to look at the Forsaken as more than just their power, like their ability with the 1 power, right? Because they have so many other qualities, and that's the whole point of the Dark. You know, it is very powerful, but at the same time, like, there's so much subterfuge. Dark friends, that is their strength. Being able to be hidden among you, right? Having those sleeper agents, if you will. Like, that's such a boon to them. And so I think when you think about the Forsaken and their power, you need to think about the whole of them, not just the ability in magic.
And like you said, this list is from Screen Rant. So I do want to give them some grace because I don't think they came up with this list by themselves. What I think they did is pretty much what I did, and that was to go to the Wheel of Time fan wiki and look at the list of Forsaken, just so like I could remember all their names. But if you go and do that, it has an official, quote-unquote, power level associated with every character. And I think that they literally just copy and pasted that information. Now, I don't know what all was considered for that power level. I think it's just the strength in the 1 power. And to ignore everything else, as we've emphasized here many times, that's a mistake. You can't ignore Tel'aran'rhiod. Riyadh. You can't ignore the ability to influence and inspire others. You can't ignore the fear that they project out when you hear their names and everything. And just having these ancillary skills does make them a more competent battler, a more competent foe when using the 1 power. Because Semirhage knows how to heal, she knows how to inflict pain, like to a degree that no one else can, even if they are stronger than her in the 1 power, which in my mind makes her a more fearsome foe, because I would rather have somebody hit me and kill me in 1 shot than hit me 50 times in all the areas that would cause me to feel like I died of 50 deaths. So it's one of those things that I did look at this list, and I consciously made the decision of not going by straight power level, but by going a little bit deeper.
And I think that was the way to go with this. Real quick, I just want to recap by going through number 1 to 13 of the power ranking. So number 1 is Ishamael. Number 2, Ravine. Number 3, Demandred. Number 4, Samael. Number 5, Agenor. Number 6, Balthamel. Number 7 was Asmodine. Number 8, Balal. And then we have number 9, Lanfear. Oof. Number 10, Semirog. Number 11, Messina. And number 12, Grandol. Number 13,
and then I have number
Mogadine.
1 is Shamael. Number 2, Demondred. Number 3, Lanfear. Number 4, Samael. Number 5, Ravine. Number 6, Semirog. Number 7, Agenor. Number 8, Grendel. Number 9, Balal. Number 10, Asmodian. Number 11, Mogadine. Number 12, Masana. And number 13, Balthamel. All right, so, I mean, we just gave you guys 2 different lists there. What list do you align with more? Do you feel like power should be, like, straight brawn, just strength of the 1 power? Or do you more so agree with me and Mike where you feel like there's more to it than just how hard they can hit you when they use the 1 power? Let us know. But I think that's going to do it for us for this episode here. So when we come back, we'll be getting a little piratey by going into One Piece maybe and seeing how that goes.
Yeah.
But for now, this is going to be 2 nerds signing off. See ya.
See ya.